the microphone. Wonderful. So I will pass the mic to my co-MC for this evening, Umayma.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm really honored to be here with you all. And again, thank you for showing up this late in the evening. I'll begin with a brief recitation of a verse from Surah Nisa. I thought it would help to ground us all as we're here in solidarity. And then I'll read the translation for you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم أو الوالدين والأقربين إن يكن غنيا أو فقيرا فالله أولى بهما فلا تتبعوا الهوى أن تعدلوا وإن تلووا أو تعرضوا فإن الله كان بما تعملون خبيرا. I'll briefly read the English translation. O you who believe, uphold justice and bear witness to God, even if it is against yourselves, your parents, or your close relatives. Whether the person is rich or poor, God can best take care of both. Refrain from following your own desires so that you can act justly. If you distort or neglect justice, God is fully aware of what you do. I will then briefly recite Fatiha for our brother and our sisters. Salman Afzaal, Madiha Salman, Talat Afzaal, and Yumna Afzaal, and in solidarity with Fayaz Afzaal. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'een, Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim, Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim, غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Ameen. And just a brief translation. In the name of God, the Lord of mercy, the giver of mercy, praise belongs to God, Lord of all worlds, the Lord of mercy, the giver of mercy, master of the day of judgment. It is you who we worship. It is you we ask for help. Guide us to the straight path, the path of those of you have blessed, those who incur no anger and who have not gone astray. Thank you.
I would also like to take a moment to acknowledge that CCMW London, Ontario chapter, we are based in London, Ontario, which is the traditional lands of the Anishinaabeg, Haudenosaunee, Lenapehoak, and Chongutun nations on lands connected with the London Township and Sombra Treaties of 1796 and the Dish with One Spoon Covenant Wampum. With this, we respect the long-standing relationships that Indigenous nations have to this land, as they are the original caretakers, and we acknowledge historical and ongoing injustices that Indigenous peoples endure in Canada, and we accept responsibility as a public organization to contribute towards revealing and correcting miseducation, as well as renewing respectful relationships with Indigenous communities through our community service. Up next in our agenda, we would like to just share a very brief video from the Youth Coalition Combating Islamophobia.
For me, reclaiming space means redefining what this space looks and feels like. It means not allowing the seeds of hatred that he sowed to grow, and not allowing his actions to define us or our place in this space.
Everyone deserves safety and peace, no matter the religion.
To heal means to restore safety in our streets, in our voices, and most importantly, in our hearts.
The phrase "we reclaim" to me means that we're taking back what is rightfully ours from the people who took it from us, and we're standing up to them and we're saying, no, this is ours as well. Everyone has the right to it, so we should as well.
I hope that we as a community can reclaim this very space we're standing on today. I want the people attending this vigil to remember the family as the beautiful people that they were, and not the hate that killed them.
Because the space was taken from us when Yumna and her family were killed, we are here to take back that space so we can make new memories in place of the bad ones.
Healing was and will continue to be a long process. I don't think healing happens overnight, but I definitely think that participating and remembering the family has played a big role in my healing process.
We remember means we will live our lives with love in our hearts and speak up against hatred.
We remember means that we remember more than just the fact that the tragedy occurred. It means that we remember the lives that were lost and the kinds of people they were. It means that we always remember the pain we felt as the tragedy first hit, and that we always remember the realization we came to then that change must come and that we must be at the front of it.
This was wrong, no matter which way you look at it. Nobody has the right to rob people of their hopes and dreams. Nobody has the right to rob people of the chance to smile one more time or to be with loved ones. I want people to feel like they must do something to change this world for the better. I want people to fill their hearts with love, not hatred, and to spread that love to the best of their abilities.
Next, we will hear some poetry from Noor Al-Abeid. Noor grew up in London, Ontario, and is an active member of the CCMW London chapter, as well as the Not in Our Backyard group joining us today. She is a law student at the University of Ottawa and a master's student at Carleton University. Thank you, Noor.
Thank you, Umayma. I hope everyone's able to hear me. So I want to say a few words on this poem first before I share it with all of you. I first wrote it in March of 2019, just before the Christchurch massacre, and it was about my own experiences with Islamophobia in London, Ontario. After Christchurch, I rewrote it to be about that attack. Last year, I rewrote it once again, but this time the poem came home in a way that was most horrific and unimaginable. It was one of the most painful things I've ever written, and I'm sharing it because art is one of the ways I translate my anger into action. But I think I could write 1,000 poems, each angrier than the last. But if there's one thing I have learned in this year, it's that I won't stop being angry until I'm sure no child will ever have to bury their family under the hatred of white supremacy ever again. So this poem is titled, How Could This Happen? They say that the gasp of war and the sigh of love are one and the same. They have never felt what it is like to gasp for air at the news of the violent loss of your loved ones. They must not know what it is like to have the air ripped from your lungs by a terrorist who believes that your people are a plague. And when we tell them white supremacy is violence, they respond with silence. And when those words become shattered bones in our bodies under the crushing weight of their hatred, they will say, how could this happen? How could this happen? It lingers between us. Sometimes it suffocates us when their hatred becomes like poison in the air, and sometimes it cuts us on the dehumanizing fear that we are shards of glass infiltrating their space and our place in this nation is questioned. Don't ask me how this could happen, not when we have warned you countless times that your ignorance is our demise. Have they not heard that when a family in Canada loses generations of life and love, when our community is shaken by the hatred they've sheltered, that community, they don't have the words left to ask, how could this happen? Thank you all for listening. Next, we're going to play a video called Embers in the Forest. This video was produced by Virtue 25 Media alongside other community leaders in London, Ontario. It highlights the realities of Islamophobia and the path to healing and resilience.
Why does this happen? What's the meaning behind it? We know that there are attitudes that exist.
Oh, you fucking Islamics and you Muslims are all the fucking same.
You're gonna come to our country and blame us.
I got a picture of Muhammad in my car. Allah, you want me to give it to you?
This was Islamophobia. This was an act of hatred.
We talk so much about inclusion and diversity, but are we actually raising awareness? Are we actually educating the public about what accepting people is?
Police say they were targeted because of their Islamic faith.
So if you wanted to define Islam, we could define it as a complete way of life. Islam is basically surrendering oneself to God Almighty. As leaders, this is something that people will look up to you in order to be able to provide that sense of guidance. How do we deal with, the emotions? How do we deal with the shock that hit our community?
London, Ontario has been my home, I think, for the past 15 years. So I've grown up in the city, been raised in the city, and just learned all I can know from my parents and the people who taught me in the city. I think Islamophobia in London is particularly insidious because of the fact that while I might not have specifically had anyone rip off my hijab, I can't say I felt welcome or felt accepted or felt safe even in the city. It's difficult walking out there and knowing that people hate you just because you wear something on your head when they don't understand why you wear it. They don't understand your beliefs. They just assume a lot of things about you. Stares in public, or mumbling and comments made, or when you're approached and saying, hey, you can take it off now. You're not oppressed here. When I grew up and I was raised here and I chose to put this on. When you've kind of lived in this city your whole life and you know this city, but you're still not welcome in this city, I still feel like an outsider in my own hometown.
Just walking down the street, you can't feel safe. You can't feel safe in taking a walk in your neighborhood. It was made clear to us in unequivocal terms that we are unsafe here. And that was a really hard thing to come to terms with.
Canadian police are weighing terrorism charges against a 20-year-old man.
A family of 5 run down while out for a walk.
After the mass murder of a Muslim family in London, Ontario, the 9-year-old lone survivor.
We believe the victims were targeted because of their Islamic faith.
It just hit so hard, the fact that you can't walk out in your neighborhood for an evening walk safely. Like, it's to that degree that we don't belong.
Yumna was my best friend. I've had something so close to me happen with Islamophobia that all of these mini things add up and they eventually become such a violent and aggressive attack that it's always in the back of your mind.
You often are going to find people questioning how much of their faith are they able to express in an environment where they're placing themselves at risk.
46% of Canadians have an unfavorable view of Islam. More than half of people living in Ontario feel mainstream Muslims believe in promoting violence. 42% of Canadians think discrimination against Muslims is mainly their fault.
The way that I found out is probably a little bit unique. I had just been picked up by my mom and I was in the car and we needed to go to Walmart. So we drove down Oxford. As I continued down the road, I realized that I was going to pass whatever it was that was happening. And immediately I saw bodies. I saw one body in the middle of the road and another one far out in the corner, and I saw them doing CPR. This was before I knew it was them. For some reason, my brain automatically went to Yumna walks here. I fell asleep, and when I woke up in the morning, my mom flings the door open. She turned her head and looked at me. She told me that it was them that we saw and that Faiz was the only survivor. I immediately fell to the ground and was in the most pain I've ever been in my life. A part of me died that day that I'll never get back.
We were averaging about 500 calls answered a month. And then after the London incident, I would say that number doubled.
You talk about
Islamophobia and what it does to a person and having all these attacks, what ends up happening to a person's psyche is that over time, they start, for example, fearing to go out. They have anxieties around being a Muslim in their workplace, which can lead to identity issues. So people are saying, I don't want to identify as a Muslim anymore.
And once you don't know who you are or what you believe in, something that grounds you isn't there for you, that's when people start to spiral.
So I'm really impressed with what I've seen from the Muslim youth here in London. They don't want to be stuck in hopelessness. They don't want to be stuck in fear, but they want to move beyond that to really make that transition from hopelessness and fear to action, to agency. They really want to be able to reclaim their voice and step into their power and make a difference.
Nothing feels more right to me than to follow that path and the paths that protect each other and create community and care for each other.
We're human beings. We're powerful human beings. We have amazing resiliency already built into us.
Give glad tidings to those who are patient and persevere. Who are they? The one that when they're afflicted with these afflictions, they say, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. To God we belong, and to Him is our return.
So earlier, we also showed a short video from the Youth Coalition for Combating Islamophobia, or YCCI. This video was a reflection of the incredible march that they had organized in London, Ontario earlier in the week. And so we wanted to further highlight this incredible organization. YCCI was created with the purpose of engaging and centering young people in the fight against Islamophobia. As the organization continues to grow, they hope to continue to plan a number of initiatives to educate and empower youth in the fight against Islamophobia. For example, the march earlier this week, and the Vigil as well. While representatives from YCCI could not be with us here today, we still wanted to continue to center the voices of the London community, and so share another video that was created by them. This video is titled To Yamna with Love, and I hope its powerful message resonates with you all as it did with me and gives you a little bit of hope in these heavy times.
If you would have asked me last year what put London, Ontario onto the global stage, I may have said our university, our healthcare system, or even our gardens. But I never would have imagined that our city would be talked about in Beijing and Washington because of hate, racism, and terror that came to us on June 6th.
We begin with breaking news and what the mayor of London, Ontario is calling an
Police say they were
unspeakable act
deliberately
of
mowed
hatred.
down by a driver who was acting out of hatred for Muslims.
A family of 5 were out walking when a car jumped a curb
At high speed into a Muslim family who were out for a Sunday evening walk.
We believe the victims were targeted because of their Islamic faith, that this was an intentional act.
This crowd has really been growing by the minute here tonight. At one point, people were lining both sides of this street.
The National Council of Canadian Muslims says this is another example of Islamophobia. They're calling this a terror attack and asking it to be treated as such.
Remember when you wanted to put on the hijab, but you were afraid something bad was going to happen to you?
Remember when we were afraid too?
And we can't just continue as if nothing has happened. There have been so many lives lost, and people are frustrated.
Remember after the Quebec massacre, they promised us that it wouldn't happen again?
They told us we shouldn't be afraid.
They told us we were safe. They told us things would change.
But they didn't.
One of the things that I heard the most in the weeks following the attack, whether at work or at school, was the sentence, "I don't understand how this happened." And while I understand the intention behind that statement, it's also really frustrating to hear because as Muslims, we experience Islamophobia every single day. And 42% of Canadians believe that we deserve it. So we know exactly how this happened.
Islamophobia comes in all different forms. Some might seem lesser than others, but it's important that people understand that smaller forms of Islamophobia are not disconnected from larger ones. Each moment of Islamophobia is intertwined with one another. The snide comments cannot be separated from the violent hate.
So last summer, I was playing basketball with my two Muslim friends at the park, and a woman came up to us and started complimenting us and saying that we are beautiful and powerful, and that she loves seeing us play basketball at our age. I thought it was a really sweet conversation, until she started saying that since we are in Canada, we can now be free, that we don't have to wear the hijab or be oppressed anymore. And she even gestured with her hands for us to remove the hijab. We smiled, brushed off her comments, and stood in the middle of the court wondering why we couldn't just play basketball without our identities being questioned, why we have to justify who we are, and why we have to keep putting up with the hate, prejudice, and the stereotypes. She couldn't fathom that maybe we were born in Canada, that we are free, and that we are strong enough to make our own choices. Wearing the hijab is my choice, for anyone who doubts it.
Even our institutions face discrimination. When we were renting a space to open a local mosque, there was an existing agreement between the landlord and the nearby church to use their parking lot when needed. But once the mosque opened, the church refused to allow worshippers to park there. The mosque offered to pay and even brought gifts as a gesture of good faith, and yet both were rejected. No one could understand why the church wouldn't allow another faith group to park there on a Friday when the parking lot's empty, since they had allowed others to park there previously. Eventually, a senior member of the church came out and mentioned that the reason they did not want us to park there was because they did not like how we looked with our long beards and dresses and women with their head coverings. He said he didn't like how Muslims came to Canada to change it and to take advantage of it. For that man, it's clear that he didn't believe that we belong, not as Canadians, not as community members, not even as neighbors.
3 days after Yumna and her family were run over, my mother and I had just left the mosque when two women in another vehicle pointed and laughed at us as they veered towards our car and attempted to run us off the road. When I pulled out my phone to videotape them, they sped off quickly. We called the police, but our complaints fell on deaf ears. My mother was asked, "Well, did they actually hit you? What would you like us to do?" It's as if violence is only physical. It's as if a family wasn't just run over in the streets of London, Ontario because they were Muslim. It's as if this couldn't happen again. My mother had to insist that the police officers speak with the women. You have to wonder how many others just give up or never make the call at all out of fear of not being believed, taken seriously, or even heard. Hate crimes go unreported for this very reason. But if we don't have an accurate snapshot of the hate in our communities, how will we ever address it? The hatred that killed Yumna didn't happen in a vacuum. It's the same hatred that Muslims experience on a daily basis, just not as violent. Yumna was my dear friend, and this is what I had to deal with after losing her in such a horrific way. We weren't even allowed to process this tragedy. We weren't even allowed to grieve in peace.
Each of these instances of Islamophobia is related to one another. What happened to Nawal is not separate from what happened to our mosque, is not separate from what happened to Maryam, and is not separate from what happened to Yumna. Islamophobia happens anywhere, everywhere, and anytime.
While we're playing basketball, looking for extra parking, grieving a loved one, or even while we're going for a walk.
The result is a community that continues to be traumatized. We are exhausted. It's a never-ending battle that we can never completely heal from.
The thing about family is that you're just always there for each other, and throughout this year, I have never needed them more. I lost an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, a friend. They were my only other family in London, and I always felt their love and support when I was with them. Losing them meant, for the first time in 14 years, losing the ability to rely on my family. I miss our family dinners. I miss how Yumna and my Aunt Madiha would decorate my hands with henna every Eid. I miss our family traditions. I cherish the memories of my aunt and uncle's loving nature, the way they made my brothers and I feel as if we were their own children, always making sure that we left their house with our bellies full and hearts a little warmer. Being the only other girl in my family, I saw Yumna like the little sister I never had. Losing her isn't just a loss for me and those who knew her, but for everyone, because she had so much potential and a lifetime ahead of her to change the world. This same world that let her down in the end. She had a dream of leaving a legacy, and now the whole world will forever remember the inspiring, caring, and special person that she was.
Our sister Yumna, her father, her mother, her grandmother, were extinguished in a moment of intentional hate. This left us with a community trying to heal from very real fears. The fear of being different, the fear of isolation, the fear of walking down the street with your family, the fear of women looking too Muslim, the fear of being targeted by hate.
And we have other families too that walk these sidewalks, and it could have been us. That's what I keep thinking, it could have been us.
These acts have consequences. They narrow space. They narrow the communal spaces we share. They diminish the space on our roads, in our schools, in our places of worship. They take up space in our minds and in our hearts. Space that should be filled with peace and happiness. Space that has left so many of us feeling so alone. We are here to take back those spaces. For our community, for ourselves, for Yumna. We are sorry that our world failed you. So our promise to you, Yumna,
is we will dry our eyes and raise our voices until everyone hears us.
We started YCCI as a youth-led organization to combat Islamophobia and to honor our friend. Join us in keeping our promise to Yumna.
Do your part and take initiative.
I will challenge all forms of hate.
I will ask the world to open their eyes, but more importantly, to open their hearts.
I will continue wearing my hijab with pride.
I am going to make sure that Yumna's legacy lives on.
We're doing our part. We hope that you'll do yours.
Next, we have some local youth from the Muslim Resource Center and Not in Our Backyard to lead a discussion portion and activity for us. I'll pass the mic to Noor, who can share a little bit more.
Sorry, just a second. That video was very touching. Okay, so next we have, as Toronto mentioned, an organization called Not in Our Backyard joining us. They formed in response to the attack June 6th, and they're currently putting together a beautiful art project that we will hear more about from Nurhan and Shada.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Thank you for everybody for joining and for sharing those videos. They've definitely, they're the YCCI, the members of the YCCI, mashallah, they're all very strong, and watching their videos it just gives me chills every time I hear them all speaking about something that's affected them so personally. So my name is Shada, and with me is Nurhan. She's gonna give a bit of a wave. So we're here to talk about a project called Not in Our Backyard, which was created by the Muslim Resource Center here in London, Ontario. Not in Our Backyard started off as just as a space for Muslims to share their experiences with gendered Islamophobia in the wake of the June 6th attack. It was a space for us to come together and discuss the realities of Islamophobia, how it affects us differently as women, and just to speak freely and name the things that we were feeling in a safe and comfortable environment, so we could begin to reclaim our safety and our space in our own hometown. The attack affected us all in different ways. We were all afraid, we were angry, we were disappointed in the responses that we were getting from politicians and from people in the wider London community. Not in Our Backyard had 22 participants. We were all young women, high school age and up, and we talked a lot about how the attack brought up fears of taking public transport, of walking around in the neighborhoods that we used to be super comfortable in before, wanting to protect our sisters, our friends, our mothers, wanting to carve a space for ourselves after it felt like it was just ripped away from us. And within this group, we participated in a few workshops centered around naming the harm and the hurt of gendered Islamophobia, and just kind of building that community and focusing around healing. So we talked a lot about our experiences, about things that we were fearing and things that we were kind of struggling through. And we're currently working on the healing phase. We're moving forward, and we're taking action through several projects that we've been building up to. Right now, they're just kind of focused on involving Muslims in defining what they want to see in their world on their own terms. So some ongoing projects that we're working on include a zine. It's a healing zine. It's built off of the things that we've done in our workshops, different grounding strategies and things like that, with 14 of the 22 participants working on content development and 7 of us taking the lead in editing and graphic design. The zine is split into 4 sections called Naming the Harm, Naming the Hurt, Healing, and The World We Deserve. So you can see a few of the activities that we kind of have up on the screen with things that we worked on, with workshops that talked about our emotions, that talked about what we've experienced and things like that. It's a combined effort of multiple teams in the zine that's going to have a lot of activities that will allow individuals to kind of like reflect within themselves and see how things are affecting them. And we can't wait for everybody to see it. Another project that we're currently working on is a digital mural called Creating the World We Deserve. It's an art project that has 24 young women, all working with social artist Melanie Schambach, as well as an upcoming poetry workshop with musical artist Timaj Jarrad, and a survey about gendered Islamophobia that we're hoping to distribute across Muslim communities in Canada. It's just going to be like a survey online. And once the zine is completed, we're hoping to hold even more workshops for women and girls in the community, including bystander intervention workshops and creating an awareness campaign using the data from the survey. Nurhan, is there anything you'd like to add kind of about what we've been working on?
I think you've got it. Thank you.
Yeah, so we have a few images in the bottom right, kind of showing our progress in the art project that we're working on, where like individuals within the group are all working on their own parts of the mural, and it's going to be placed together and into one big image.
Yeah, and I just want to go over here. This is my favorite part about the whole process. The seeing it come together. So for our first section, we have a local Muslim woman in the community that's really good at drawing and graphic design and things like that. So we had her kind of draw comics about what gendered Islamophobia might look like, and I love looking at the little panels she has, and yeah, I'm overall really excited for the zine and the other things we have coming up. Shoza, is it okay to transition into the activity, or?
Yeah, I think so. So we're gonna do a bit of an activity, kind of reflecting off of what the zine is going to contain and what we did in our workshops before. And Nurhan's going to be facilitating that.
Right, perfect. So for the next part of our presentation, we have an activity kind of from the zine, just to kind of give you guys a little look into it, I guess, and what it's going to contain. So one of the activities that we're hoping to have in the zine, and that we did in person with some of the participants, was like these like circle activities, where you kind of like get an emotion that you've been feeling recently, that like an emotion, and just kind of like within the circle draw what it means to you, or maybe like have a poem or things like that. So these are some examples from what some participants did. And these are the emotions at the bottom right here. So what we're hoping to do with you guys today is kind of do something similar. And we want to start off by kind of like validating our emotions about how we feel about the attack 1 year later. So I'm hoping, like, could everyone grab a paper and a pencil or pen, and if they're able to draw, like, I'll just give everyone like a minute to do that. If not, I think you like going on your phone and using a notes app would also work as well. So I'll just give everyone like 1 minute to grab a paper and a pencil.
It can be illustrations, it can be words if you're in the mood to write some poetry or to write some song lyrics, just whatever is like feels right for you when it comes to expressing this emotion. Yeah, just kind of go with the flow with that.
Should I put on music, like very ambient? I don't know. Okay, I'll do that. What I like right now, it's raining in London, so it's like the rain is very soothing, so I feel like that's good. But in case anyone can't hear it, let's just use this one. And just so it's not like too quiet. How's everyone doing? Do you need more time? Would anyone like to share? Wait, I'm just gonna stop there for a second. Okay. Shaza, would you like to share what you did?
Sure, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the most important things when it comes to like creating that space where everybody's comfortable to share is just acknowledging the fact that like these feelings are very heavy. Like sometimes you don't want to talk about them, you don't want to express them, but it's what's really important. And for me, I was actually talking to a few non-Muslim friends yesterday, and they kind of asked me how I was doing now that it's been a year since the attack. And I told them I just word vomited, and I told them everything. And I found myself shaking afterwards. And I was like, kind of surprised that it affected me so much, even a whole year later. But I wanted to just kind of express a bit of that. So I chose fear for mine. And I'm gonna have to turn off my blurring, but I just drew kind of how I felt in the aftermath of that one. All I was doing was just talking about something that happened a whole year ago, but has never really stopped affecting me. Yeah, that was what I kind of wanted to express here. And if you'd like, you can feel free to share in the chat as well.
I'll share.
Yeah, go for it.
This is Shaheen from Toronto. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I did a word flow, so it's not just one feeling, because as we know, feelings are all connected. Numbing pain, where the chest plate is heavy with the gravity of what lies behind and ahead of us as women. Disbelief that fabric that is woven together is what tears society apart. Frustration that minds are narrowed in a world that has never been more connected. Faithful that beyond our unknowing is the all-knowing, breathing us towards the light.
That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
I think Asia has her hand up.
Yeah, go for it, Asia.
Thank you, Shaheen. I think that's kind of how I felt too. And that's how I did mine's more like that than I did a drawing. Yeah, no, that was very beautiful. For me, like last year, I think it was one of the hardest times, like back in June. I'm from London originally. I'm at the CCMW London chapter. I have family who live like right on the street where the Afzaal family lived, and who also wear hijab, who are very visibly Muslim, who, you know, walk down that street so often. I went to the school that Yumna went to. Just like so many feelings that are there. I think for me, you know, and I remember being an organizer for a lot of the various vigils that have taken place over the years. So it was, I remember back in January 29th for the Quebec City Mosque shooting, having to organize that vigil, and then Christchurch when that happened, of course, and then when I found myself coming to the one in London, I couldn't take part in that. It was way too much. But essentially, it has been everything that I've ever feared come to life. When I think of June 6th, I think of like an entire loss of belonging, losing my sense of belonging, losing my sense of self, my you know, loss of safety. And I think a lot of what happened is part of the reason why I never chose to wear hijab, although I've always wanted to. It's that sense of fear that came with, okay, if I visibly appear as Muslim, like, you know, what would happen? So that's why I always have a lot of respect for young women who wear the hijab and whatnot. But that's kind of what happened on June 6th. it's like, how do we go forward from this? I don't know. I think most of us are still figuring that out, but so much of my respect goes out to the young folks who are doing so much work on this.
Thanks for sharing. That sounds really difficult. And I do agree with your last point. Like, I think a lot of us, like even 1 year later, are still trying to grapple with everything and trying to figure out how to heal from it. And yeah, I don't know, this is really hard for me. Yeah. Tara, would you like to share? So I'm not much of an artist, and so I drew a circle and put my pen on the paper, and what ended up coming out is just a bunch of scribbles. I think hopefully you can kind of see, and it was just a mess of scribbles, and I just kept going, and I was like, I should do like a proper drawing, but it just didn't come out. And I think then I tried to put words to what those scribbles represented, and tired and confused and maybe a little angry are kind of what came to mind. And I think Shaheen and Asiya captured all those feelings too and what they just shared. But yeah, I'm kind of just tired that this keeps happening, and tired because I don't know what to do about it, and confused because I don't know what to do about it, and confused and tired of feeling powerless, and maybe scared of not feeling like I have control. The small amounts of control that we do have, I feel like I don't even have that sometimes. And so, yeah. For sure. I think that like a loss of control, being tired, being confused are all like very valid feelings, and I do agree with like that kind of like block in the beginning, because I was like looking at my paper and I'm like, I don't even know what to draw. Shada texted me, she's like, oh, you guys should be done by now. I'm like, I didn't even draw anything. But yeah, Nushat, would you like to share?
Sure. Okay, I guess I should turn on my video.
That would be lovely.
So, you know, I was staring at the piece of paper and thinking, what should I draw? And then an image came to my mind, and it was an image of a tree that's burdened, you know, that's got tons of weighed down with a lot of snow and ice. And that's how I felt. I felt really, you know, just like the weight of the world on our shoulders, all of us collectively. But then reflecting on the young women and the young men that spoke in the previous videos, and seeing all of you here, you know, we wanted CCMW to hear your voices, the young women to express themselves and show us the way out of this. And then I thought about another image, and that was, you know, once the snow melts, once the weight is lifted, you know, and then the tree comes back up, and the branches and the leaves are once again, you know, they've gained their strength. So I sort of, you know, visualize this process of the burden lifting, the ice lifting, the snow lifting. And you know, it sort of provoked in me the image of a late spring snowfall, when you know, the branches are starting to get full, and or a May snowfall. And that's exactly how I feel right now. That, you know, we're getting out of this. The sadness will be there, but I believe that the process to heal has started because of you. Actually, I'm inspired by all of you and the young women in you know, the groups that you just shared with us, because I feel hopeful now. I feel like something is going to be done, because it's all in your hands, and you have taken action. You've already started, you know, to be constructive. So I am grateful, you know, to God that He's given you all the strength and creativity to move us forward. So I hope that helps. At least that's how I felt, and I'm sharing. Thank you.
Thank you. That's some really beautiful imagery. Thank you so much, Nushat.
Nora, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thank you. My Mine was a bit different. I did only use words. I didn't draw anything. But so when I think of June 6th, I feel like it's taken me a year to realize this, but I feel betrayed. I feel betrayed by the people that I thought were my allies. I feel betrayed by a city that I've given everything to, that I was born and raised in. I feel betrayed because I know that we tried to tell people that this could happen, that this is very possible, well within the realm of possibility. And I feel also betrayed because, in a sense, this was sheltered in a lot of homes of people that we do consider our allies. Conversations that should be happening in those homes that aren't happening. And so I feel betrayed, and I feel like I want that accountability to happen just as much as I want us to heal. I want accountability for the individuals that sheltered this, that allowed it to happen, that ignored us when we told them that this could happen. So that's what I wrote.
It is really hard to like rely on a system and live within a system and have it like let us down this badly. And I share your feelings, and they're validated within this space. Thank you for sharing. Fatma, would you like to go next?
Yes, it's really nice to see you all. I also didn't know what to write at first. I kind of wrote in words how I remember feeling, especially the first few days after it happened, not being able to cry at first, even just like staring into space for, hours on end. I felt hopeless, scared, and unable to feel. And I also felt betrayed too, to jump off of what Noor said. I went to a very multicultural school in Ottawa, and the population in the school was full of girls who wore the hijab, and I always felt like I belonged. I felt safe, I felt respected, I felt understood. I didn't feel like I needed to justify why I wore the hijab to anybody. But I left Canada at some point, and then I came back after a few years, and because I left in high school, that image kind of stayed with me, and I thought that was what Canada was as a whole, a multicultural place where everybody understood and loved and respected me, and it was very, very disappointing, to say the least, when I realized that was not the case, because a lot of things happen, and I just don't know that this one hit me the hardest, particularly just because it was so in such a normal act of life, just walking down a street, so it just, I don't know, and it kind of gets me to question and wonder, where is home? And am I not part of this world, and which part of it do I really belong to? And it's an odd feeling because I feel really alone, and while I know that what I feel, a lot of people feel, and I'm not alone in this feeling, but somehow I still feel very alone. I don't know how to get over this feeling, and it's not that it's good to know a lot of people share this pain. It's just comforting to know that that I'm understood. So I thank you all.
I'm not tearing up now, because I think I relate to this feeling of like being alone. Others are hurting, but it's just like really hard to like feel like you fit in this world. I really relate to that. Thank you for sharing something so deep. Eva in the chat says, my heart hurts. As a non-Muslim, I feel like we have all failed. Every act of hatred feels like we have not done enough to repair our world. As a member of the Jewish community, I hope you can work together to change the world. I agree with Nozhed, you all give me hope. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. I think if no one else wants to share, I think moving, we've all kind of let our feelings out, and
like validated them and like kind of put them down on paper so they're not in our head and kind of taking up a lot of space in our bodies and in our mind. I want to share our next more lighter activity for everyone. And it is this one. Let me just share my screen. So this one is just feel free, like on your paper, like on the other side or like in another empty space, to respond to the prompt, do something similar, have a circle, but your prompt for this one is, as Muslim women, the world we deserve is, and draw imagery or words just like you did for the last one, but in here just write what you believe you deserve, right? So a lot of you kind of touched on this. You feel like you don't belong in this world, you feel alone, you feel betrayed. So what would you like to see from our world? Yeah. Yeah. And there's some prompts here, like what does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it smell like? Taste like as well? And I'll give like about 5 minutes.
Are we good to share? Okay. So I hope that was enough time. Shadla, can I pick on you again?
Sure. So I went with a drawing again this time. I just kind of drew like a little bird. Oh my gosh, every time it's gonna have my drawing blurred and I'm gonna have to show off all of the posters in my background. There we go. So yeah, I just drew kind of a little drawing of a bird because I feel like what kind of is the most important thing for me is that in general, I'm a very anxious person. And this is something that's just kind of added on as just another burden. And I think that like we deserve kind of a world where this isn't hovering over our heads. And it's something that like it's kind of been picked up. It's not something that's never existed for sure, because we've all experienced it in different ways, but it's definitely something that's picked up even extra weight in like the past year. And something that I would like to do is kind of shed that weight and be able to just be free of it in general.
Very metaphorical. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I love it. And the bird, it kind of reminds me of the zine.
Yes.
Can't give away too much though, but yeah. Okay. Thank you for sharing. I'm going to read Kara's comment. So respectful, gentle, inclusive, regardless of religion, ethnicity, or sexual orientation, free, joyful, safe, values of family and gender equality, justice against those who destabilize these values. Yes, I love that. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I like the word gentle as well. I think for mine, I did a combination of like drawings and words. I don't know if you can see, but it's like that's supposed to be me with like hearts around me. I wanted to draw like more symbols and imagery like of what it would look like, I guess, like maybe whatever. But I don't think we have enough time for today. So I wrote on the top like being able to go for walks, wearing the hijab, like praying in public, because I think that's something I used to do often, but I don't anymore. Like if I need to pray, I'll go in the corner of a building or something. And people like see me, but it's like more discreet, but I feel like I can't like do that as much anymore. And I feel like what does the world we deserve feel like kind of stood out to me, because I feel like without even like facing like direct Islamophobia, it just like the glares of people, like I don't know if anyone like feels that, would just like it just feels like unsafe. I don't know, I feel like that's also a big thing for me. So yeah, those are the things that first came to mind. Yeah. I don't know, would anyone else like to share to end on a more positive note before we're done with our activity? Feel free to put in the chat as well if you don't want to speak out loud.
I'll share. I think I drew or like imagery that came to mind, kind of inspired by Notet's earlier comments, was a big tree with like blooming flowers. And like one of those really tall ones, I think, like that give you a lot of shade and comfort, that's just been there forever. In my neighborhood where I lived in London, I was very close. I was downtown, so I was very close to Victoria Park, and I can think of a couple of trees in the park in the summer that are just really grounding. And so that space with like the little chitter chatter of people and dogs in the background, summer and winter, even in the winter when there's people ice skating at the park. So I think that space and nature and just like hustle and bustle, but in a serene kind of way is kind of what I imagined and pictured. And I think what that kind of tried to capture is like living and living fully without any obstruction is I think kind of what my what kind of images came to my head.
Love that. Thank you for sharing. Victoria Park is really nice. I would go there on walks often, but yeah. Okay, thank you again for sharing. Would anyone, maybe one more before we end off, if anyone wants to share? Yes, Nazhat, thank you.
Yes, I was again thinking of an image rather than words or drawing it. And that was a very large embrace, you know, people, everybody embracing humanity, you know, in a big circle around the world. And also, an embrace is a very comforting thing. So people embracing the world, people embracing humanity and comforting each other, because I think right now that's what I feel like. That's what the kind of world we deserve, that we all should be embraced. Whoever embraces us accepts us for who we are. Yeah, I'll stop there. Thank you.
We should all end off with like a big virtual hug or something. I think that would be really nice. Yeah, thank you for sharing. But yeah, I think, yes, sending everyone, oh my God, thank you. We can all like, what if we all like hug each other, like hug yourself at the same time and just like close your, like just pretend we're all hugging each other. Do you guys want to do that? I don't know, just to end off this activity and then I'll pass it off to you. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Okay, big squeeze.
Thank you so much to everybody who participated.
Yes, thank you. I had fun today and like this was really healing being with all of you. So thank you for providing me with this space.
Thank you. Thank you both so much for your time and for sharing and for that discussion. I agree with Umayma that that was very cathartic and really wonderful to hear from everyone. Thank you to everyone who shared. And thank you earlier as well to Noor for sharing your beautiful poetry. And even though they're not present, on behalf of CCMW, I'd like to thank YCCI and the other leaders who were involved in creating some of those incredibly beautiful and powerful videos. And so as we end off, I'd like to pass the microphone to Nina, who will close off our session and our vigil today with a prayer, inshallah.
Thank you so much, Tarannum. Thank you to all of the young women who have worked hard to put this beautiful event together. I did feel hugs and I felt a lot of love tonight, alhamdulillah. As Nazat and others have said tonight, I want to reiterate how inspiring the young Muslim women of London are. You are amazing leaders and you all have us behind you. And I hope that you feel our love and prayers. May God continue to give you strength and hope for better days ahead. As Muslims, we cannot lose hope. We must always be optimistic. We know that everything is in our Creator's hands, tawakkul, which means always have trust in Allah. Our Creator is always asking us to do the best we can with the resources that He has gifted us and with the time we have left in this world. Our intentions to serve God must be first and foremost. We know that when we are in service to others, we are actually serving God. We must continue to do the work, continue to pray, and continue to be patient. But remember, we have to do the work, and we cannot let fear overtake us. We know that nothing is possible without Allah's will. I'll close tonight with a saying of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. O Allah, you are peace. From you comes peace, and to you returns peace. Revive us with a salutation of peace, and lead us to your abode of peace. Inshallah, all of us will be together in Jannat with the Afzaal family, because they must be there. They are surely shahids. They are martyrs in the way of God. And we pray for little Fayaz. May he always be surrounded by those who love him and protect him and care for him, inshallah. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Ameen. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I hope you have a really wonderful evening and good night.